Okay, so thanks very much for coming. Today we're going to be talking to Adam Dubé from McGill University. And I just wanted to start off by saying thanks, Adam, for helping us out with this CSBBCS Meet the Researcher series. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions today. And so I'm going to start off by just saying welcome. So tell us, where did you study for your undergraduate and graduate degrees?
So I did my undergraduate, my master's, and my PhD all at the University of Regina with Dr. Catherine Robinson there. We did an initial project with my honors degree with my undergraduate, and that led into many years of fruitful research together. After my PhD, I went and did my postdoctoral degree in the Faculty of Information at the University of Toronto, where it was with a bunch of digital humanities scholars. So I went from doing all of my training in the same place within the field of experimental and developmental psychology, and then I did my postdoc with a bunch of digital humanities scholars, which was a wonderful experience, very different.
Yeah, for sure. And so why and how did you decide to focus on your particular field of cognitive psych?
And so my area is in educational technology, and I actually came into this out of my background in mathematical cognition. So I was studying how children problem solve in mathematics, how that changes over time. And towards the end of my PhD, we started looking at, for one, the iPad was invented. And we started looking at this learning tool and its implications it could have for mathematics instruction. And we started doing a bunch of projects on tablets and technology as it relates to math learning. And that got me interested in this. We did some eye tracking research towards the end of my PhD. And it's like, oh, maybe I really want to do this. So I started looking for postdocs that were in this particular area of the applying technology to learning. And so that's where I looked at, there was a postdoctoral position at the U of T on game-based learning. I applied to the one in game-based learning and I didn't get it, but they offered me another one that was on learning with technology. And I had done research with tablets towards the end of my PhD. So I was a good candidate for it. And from there, it completely moved towards using mobile devices for learning. We did projects and grants on 3D printing as learning tools. And we wrote an entire book on the use of tablets and, as educational tools from that particular experience. So it went from a very, basic research on mathematical cognition, and then it expanded out into technology for learning based on that foundation.
Well, that kind of fits nicely into the next question I have for you. Is you seem to have done a lot. So can you tell me a bit about the skill set required for your work? All those different things you did, like computing, working with different populations, different techniques that you learned, and how did you develop these expertise?
So I think what's really interesting about this is that the skill sets that I've acquired slowly over time have enabled me to study the different topics and phenomena that I'm interested in. And so when we first started doing research in math cognition, we used to do all of our work on paper and pencil with kids. So they're literally solving problems on paper and pencil, talking to them, using a stopwatch in our hand. And we said, okay, well, the field is moving towards using computers for displaying the stimuli. So learning to program in E prime, say, for example. So we developed that for doing that particular work. And so that we could more accurately measure children's reaction times and control the problems that we were presenting to them. And then as we were moving and developing that skill and kind of continuing down that path, that's when we started looking at other technologies like tablets, and we got an eye tracker in the lab because we were thinking, okay, well, we want to be able to actually monitor where people are looking when we display the stimuli to them. And so that resulted in essentially a year where I learned how to program using a Tobii Studios, using that eye tracker. And that eye tracking experience was something that enabled me when I applied for my postdoc. They were looking for people with expertise who knew how to program eye trackers and collect data with eye trackers. And I had known how to integrate E prime with Tobii from that experience. So we could display stimuli in controlled settings and controlled ways, get millisecond reaction times while collecting eye tracking and coordinate all these things together. And then while I was doing my postdoc, we started going like, okay, well, we've got some other research questions. We're interested in other aspects. how do we do eye tracking, not just in a lab environment, but then also inside of a classroom environment. So we started looking at what eye trackers were available. So we purchased the Face Lab system, which included head tracking and facial tracking so that we could do research with children in classroom environments where we didn't have to have like a chin rest for the eye tracker to keep them situated. Like, so it was very free movement and everything. And so in terms of the skill sets, it kind of came out, okay, well, the field had moved away from paper and pencil towards computer presentations. So we acquired that skill, and that enabled us to sort of lead into eye tracking research, which more advanced eye tracking research, and enabled us to study the different technologies that were being used for learning through these sort of skills that were acquired over many years, sort of thing. So it kind of arose naturally. And by the now currently within our lab, we use a range of different techniques, everything, through eye tracking using pupil diameter for cognitive load, millisecond reaction times. We use gaze data in much of our research, as well as we design our own educational games within the lab, so that we could not just create stimuli that we present, but we actually create whole learning experiences that we can control, and then we monitor those learning experiences. We've delivered them, say, for example, children play these games at home. We collect log data, which is the in-game behavior data. That's all collected in a server, and we are able to measure their moment-by-moment behaviors in these educational games that we designed to teach them mathematics. Coincidentally, some of my graduate students do that. So we're currently doing that. So there's a whole range of things, but I think that they've kind of slowly come over time. It's not like I had this set training. It's like, okay, we wanted, the field moved forward slowly. We kind of followed it. And then there were certain problems that we wanted to address. We learned new skills how to do it. And by now we have a whole range of techniques that we're using.
For sure. Great. So what advice would you offer graduate students today? And I guess in the same extent, or perhaps a slightly different question, what about undergraduates?
Yeah, so I'm the graduate program director of learning sciences in my department. And so I often give advice for graduate students. For one of the things I would say for undergraduate students, the biggest advice I can give is to get research experience. It's not necessarily required that you go and do an honors degree in psychology. Say if you've gone all the way through your undergraduate and you're going, oh, I really enjoy academia. I'm really interested in research, but I didn't go down that path right away. That isn't a barrier. You can go out and get research experience by volunteering in labs, collecting data, getting to know the principal investigator of that lab so they can write you a reference letter. That's really critical for that type of experience. And so like for an undergraduate student, that's really key, getting that experience. And then for graduate students, what I would say that's critical is to, one, manage your time so that you don't burn out. I think that's really critical. Graduate school can put a lot of pressure on individuals. I personally really enjoyed graduate school. I had a wonderful time. It was a great experience. I always, we always had a lot of work to do, but I didn't necessarily feel overwhelmed within mine. But I think today there's more and more pressure to publish and to go to conferences and to build your CV. And so people really have to manage their time, make sure that you're budgeting time for your weekends and your evenings. So you actually take that time. So that's really critical. Make sure you're doing that. Don't burn out, because it is a marathon, not a sprint. Exactly. Things never get less hectic. I can tell you, I thought like, oh, I'll get my PhD, I'll do my postdoc. When I get and then when I get a job, it would be less hectic. And now I'm sitting here going like, well, maybe when, now I've just applied for tenure, like maybe it'll get less hectic. It's like, it doesn't get less hectic. You only get more skilled, and which means you get things done faster, which means you can get more stuff done in the same amount of time. And so you always add on more stuff. So right now I've got 12 students in my lab, all doing their own independent research projects, and we're monitoring all these things. And so there's never less work. So take the time for yourself is a big one. But in terms of success, I would say for those graduate students, look for a diversity of experience so that you build your analysis skills from a statistical standpoint. Because if you're going to go into the labor market outside of academia, those analysis skills can be really helpful within industry. Get a broad range of measurement tool experience. So if you can learn how to do observational data, learn how to develop an online survey, learn how to validate surveys, learn how to do behavioral measurements, programming, all those things are skills that you can port to other labs, to other research questions, right? So they're portable skills. That's really critical. And you can get those. Maybe your lab doesn't do research on that. Collaborate with other students in your department, collaborate with them to gather those skills. And the last thing I would say is that, graduate school is an excellent time to build your group of colleagues, your peers. And so make sure that you're going outside your department, attend talks at other departments, look at, go to other departments that are interested in the same stuff that you are, but not necessarily the same approach. And, talk to those individuals, build connections if you're at your university. We all tend to sort of work in our silos. And of course, all this advice only works when we're allowed to actually go any place physically in person. So that's when we get back, but they try to take advantage of the fact, we now are missing being on campus. Take advantage of being on a campus. It's got a diverse range of people who are all very interested in research. And, don't just focus on your thesis. There's other things there, other skills, other connections that you should be forming during grad school that really help you later on.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And so how has your lab coped with the past year with COVID restrictions with in-person?
So it's been good, a lot. It's been hard this past year. So like I said, I've got 12 students within the lab, between students all at the master's level or above, doing research projects. And in this past year, we had a full year project where we collected data in the fall of 2019 as a pretest. We were going to and then we were going to do an intervention where we developed an educational app for an intervention with one of my students' PhD studies or their dissertation research. And when she went to go actually do the intervention, COVID happened, right? So we had to suddenly move our intervention purely to an online format. We had to move all in-person data collection to online data collection. And this was individual data collection that you would do, say like in a group of 4 in a classroom. All of our research is done with kids in classrooms for that type of work. And so we've had to move that all online through Zoom, learning the protocols for doing that, how to deliver these things. And so that was a big move. That was very challenging. And then the other thing that we did was that we looked at opportunities that this experience gave us by developing. I did a lot of in-person data collection based on cognitive measures, very sort of traditional experiment focused, right? So experimental designs. And we said, okay, well, online, it can be hard to do some of these experiments that we would like to do in a very controlled way. So what other types of research can we do via online platforms? So we've developed measurement tools and survey tools that we've then deployed through online survey systems that collect participants where you can pay them directly. And we've actually found, since this, we've actually collected data from, I bet you it's upwards of 1,000 participants since COVID happened, purely through online survey tools like Prolific and Honeybee, right? Where these online participant pools, we've been able to pay people through those, and then running surveys and experiments through Qualtrics, say, for example. And so that's something we didn't do before, and now we can because we were forced to. So going forward, we're going to continue doing this. It's actually added to the repertoire of research that our lab is doing, because it's kind of forced us into it. And now we're looking at, okay, how do we run some of those more controlled experiments as well online and still know that we can get, say, like accurate reaction time data, say, for example.
And so just to kind of finish off here, do you have some further reading that you might suggest for people who are interested in your line of work?
Yeah, so, for the people that are interested in work, if you're interested in tablet research, we've got the book Understanding Tablets by myself and my colleague Rhonda McEwen. So that is an entire book on the use of tablets as learning tools. We have a model of tablet-based learning within that we propose based on a combination of cognitive science and communication theory, because she's an information science and communication scholar. And within that, we conceptualize children learning with technology as a form of communication between the device and the user, or the device and the child, in which messages are sent and received, and that features of the device shape the learning conversation, as well as the cognitive capacity of the child similarly shapes that learning conversation between these two units. And so we talk about that throughout that chapter. Some original published research is in there, as well as reviews of research on the screen learning, say, for example. So that's a great one. And you can find that on my ResearchGate. It's the easiest place to find a link to it, but you can Google Understanding Tablets and Adam Dubé. And then this past year, the other thing to look at is I recently, with one of my graduate students, wrote the, what's the technical term for it? It's technically called the Industry Guidelines on Digital Learning. This is a white paper that we wrote for the United Nations. And so it gives suggestions about how to design effective educational technologies. And that's available. You can find it on the UNESCO website for Industry Guidelines on Digital Learning, but you can also find it on ResearchGate for a link to that. So that kind of puts sort of all the theories into practical policy suggestions. And so those are two things I would say you can check out, as well as any of the other published articles that we have. They're all up on ResearchGate as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much for your time today. And thanks for helping us out. Awesome.
So it's my pleasure. Thanks for setting this up. And I look forward to seeing the other ones that come out.